Don't worry about making millions. Instead, focus on the first $100,000 because after that, your net worth will skyrocket. This is the best advice you'll ever hear about building high net worth. So why are the first 100K the hardest? Well, there are two main reasons for that. The first is your purchasing power. Think of it like a level in a video game. You just haven't been playing long enough to develop your skills, and therefore, you can't compete with the more experienced players. This is exactly what happens when it comes to making money when you're younger. In fact, this problem is getting even worse. A recent study found that Gen Z has about 86% less purchasing power than the baby boomers had at the same age. This is partly due to older people staying in the workforce longer, which means it's harder to land higher paying jobs. But it's not all doom and gloom. The internet offers a great way for younger people to make a lot more money than the older generation, since most of them don't even know how to use Instagram, let alone build an online side business. The second reason why the first $100,000 is the hardest is the lack of compound interest. Think of your money like a snowball. You roll it downhill by investing money, and as it rolls, it picks up more snow, which represents your compound interest. This is the famous snowball effect created by Warren Buffett. The bigger your snowball, the more snow it collects, and therefore, the more compound interest you generate. Sounds amazing, right? Well, yes and no. Let me explain. Now, if you don't have at least $100,000, then your snowball isn't big enough to generate significant income. Basically, you can't benefit in a meaningful way from compound interest. I mean, let's say you invest $10,000 in an index fund like the S&P 500 and get an average annual return of 7%, which historically has been the return that investors can expect. After 5 years, your money would have grown from $10,000 to $14,176. That's 5 whole years to earn just $4,176. And this is why it's so hard to hit the first $100,000. It all depends on how much you can contribute to your investment rather than how much you can accumulate with compound interest. That means to get there, you're going to need to earn more money in any way that you can. But trust me, it's worth it. Once you hit the first $100,000, you'll realize that it's so much easier to make your money grow from there. So why does net worth grow so fast after $100,000? The answer is simple. Because compound interest stops being insignificant and starts to look truly unbelievable. Take a look at this chart. If you invest $10,000 annually with an average return of 7% per year, it will take 7.84 years to go from $0 to $100,000. However, to go from $100,000 to $200,000, it will take just 5.1 years. In total, this means it will take 2.74 fewer years to earn the second $100,000 compared to the first. That's 35% faster, and the trend only gets better. If we continue the analysis, we'll see that to go from $200,000 to $300,000 will only take 3.78 years. Then from $300,000 to $400,000, just 3 years. By the time you get from $400,000 to $500,000, the time drops to just 2.5 years. The pattern repeats itself, and wealth growth accelerates more and more. All of this happens after the first $100,000. That's why getting to that amount as quickly as possible is crucial. Think about it. If you can save a few years on the time it takes to hit the $100,000 mark, the rest practically takes care of itself. Once you hit that point, becoming wealthy becomes almost inevitable, as long as you keep investing in a low-cost index fund. In fact, if you simply invested the first $100,000 in an S&P 500 index fund and never made another contribution, you would still become a millionaire in 33 years just by letting compound interest work in your favor. That's the power of compound interest after hitting the first $100,000. So, how can you make your first $100,000? Well, all you need to do is follow the growth method. The G stands for gaining control over your finances. And there's only one way to do this: budgeting. But don't get confused. Budgeting isn't a set of rules created to stop you from having fun. On the contrary, it's a guide that steers your choices, helping you make smarter decisions with your money. I'm not saying you need to be extremely frugal, but it's essential to understand the difference between your needs and your wants. The R stands for roots and investments. Let's say you invest $250 a month in an S&P 500 index fund and get an average annual return of 7%. In 40 years, you'll have accumulated $656,000. But the most impressive part is that $536,000 of that amount will come from compound interest. That means out of your own pocket, you'll only need to invest $120,000. Now, I know what you're thinking. That's great, but by then, I'll be over 60 and drooling over my dinner. I totally get it. That's why if you can invest your first $100,000 as quickly as possible, your financial situation will be much better than in this example. Now that you're making money, it's time to focus on the O. which stands for optimizing your tax management. This might sound complicated, but in reality, it's pretty simple. Avoid paying unnecessary taxes. Let me make something clear. Tax evasion, cheating on taxes, is illegal, and that's not what I'm talking about. Tax avoidance, using the law to reduce taxes, is totally legal and something smart people do. Maybe you're thinking, but if I'm making more money, shouldn't I pay more taxes? I agree with you. And indeed, the wealthiest people pay the majority of taxes. However, there should also be incentives for entrepreneurs as they create jobs and drive the economy. Fortunately, that incentive exists. Entrepreneurs are taxed on their net profit, meaning what's left after they deduct expenses. This is called write-offs. Employees, on the other hand, are taxed directly on their salaries with no deductions available. Now imagine you love technology and want to buy the new iPhone. You could create a YouTube channel reviewing gadgets, and as soon as you start making revenue, you could deduct the cost of your tech items as business expenses. This means you essentially get those items tax-free, as they're part of your job. In short, the government ends up helping you pay for what you want. However, you can only do this within reason. Your business or side hustle must genuinely need that item. In other words, it should be a justifiable expense. That's why starting a business based on your passion can be a great way to save a lot on taxes. That's exactly what I do with my video production business, and you can do this with basically any business. Now, the next step of the method is the W, weed out debts. Did you know that the average American has $21,800 in debt? So if you're in debt, know that you're not alone. The first thing you should do is list all your debts and prioritize them according to their interest rates. Debts with the highest interest rates should be eliminated first. This is the dark side of compound interest. If you don't understand how it works, it can end up working against you. Think of it like the sun melting the snow you're trying to build up to reach your first $100,000. If you have a lot of debt, it will melt your financial progress, preventing you from reaching the point where your money works for you. My advice? Make small extra payments whenever possible because every little bit helps. But above all, don't ignore your debt because neglecting it can bring a lot of stress in the future. So even if it feels like you're losing money by paying off debt, think of it as an essential investment to reach your first $100,000. Now, let's move on to the T. Tap into additional streams of income. Yes, I'm talking about starting a side business. In 2023, 50% of Americans had an extra source of income, even those who earned over $100,000 a year. Having a side hustle brings many advantages, especially diversifying your income. This means you'll have more money to put into tax-advantaged accounts and invest even more. Once again, you'll be adding more snow to your snowball, allowing compound interest to do its work. Finally, we have the H, heightened self-discipline. To apply everything we've discussed so far, you need to find your inner discipline. Discipline is the currency of success. The more you mint, the richer your future will be. If you want to know how to build your wealth from scratch, then I'll leave a video up here, but don't click on it yet. First, don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you want to grow your net worth. I'll see you there.